Welcome to episode 27 of the Tailoring Talk Show with me, your host, Roberto Revilla. I'm a bespoke tailor, menswear designer, and owner of Roberto Revilla London suit and shirt makers. This is the podcast where you drop in for the threads but often leave with something quite unexpected. I talk to self-starters and creators about their journeys, the highs and lows and lessons they've learned along the way. If you haven't already, please support the show by subscribing and adding a rating and review if your podcast player allows. This really helps with those pesky search algorithms and helps us to grow this podcast. I'm joined this week all the way from New York, yes, the Big Apple, my second favourite city in the world after London, of course. My guest is a seasoned bass guitar player and music director. He's performed with over 50 Rock N Roll Hall of Fame inductees and in 12 Broadway shows. He's performed with a host of musical legends, including Sting, Elvis Costello, The Temptations, Ben E. King, Percy Sledge, the great Bo Diddley, Carlos Santana, and even U2, and many more. He's played Carnegie Hall, the Kennedy Center. On Broadway, he's performed in shows ranging from Rock of Ages, Spider-Man, and Kinky Boots. He's been on television performing on the Conan O'Brien show and Craig Ferguson. If I keep going, we will never actually get to talk to the guy. He recently released his book, Memoir of a Working Class Rock Star. Ladies and gents, thank you for being with me as we welcome Ivan Funkboy Bodley to the Tailoring Talk Show. Ivan, how are you, my friend?
I am exhausted just listening to that. Man, I'm not sure I did all that stuff. Actually, I think I actually did. But over time, it wasn't like a weekend. That was that's a 30-year career you just encapsulated there.
Exactly, and not even some of it. I mean, dude, I don't know how you've managed to cram what you've crammed. I don't know if you've ever had a wink of sleep in your entire life. It's incredible, really. And speaking of which, I think we were setting up this call this morning and I was not expecting you to be emailing me at 4 a.m. your time. It's crazy, but you were like, yeah, I'm up. I've just finished a gig.
I just finished 3 gigs yesterday, actually. Well, I should say 2 gigs and a teaching. So yeah, it was my day yesterday was 9 to 5, but that's 9 a.m. to 5 a.m. Because that's just the way it bounces sometimes. You know, I appeared on Broadway last night, subbing in the musical "Ain't Too Proud: The Life and Times of the Temptations," and then did a late night gig, 1 to 4 a.m. at the Red Lion on Bleecker Street, which is like a funk band, a covers band that we do, which is all Prince and Sly and the Family Stone and James Brown covers. And that one's that used to be every Thursday, but now it's about once or twice a month kind of thing. So yeah, I got home and got your email and 4:30 in the morning. Thought I would just reply to you. Why not?
Yeah, wow. I as I get older, I struggle to do anything these days past, to be honest, like my brain's always kind of going. So realistically, I guess I do not live on that much sleep. But I mean, wow, how you physically do it is just a wonder to me. For anyone that's listening and wondering, so when I was awarded the Brit List Award a few years ago, Shortlist magazine called me the Rock N Roll Tailor. And Ivan is a rock and roll / funk musician. And we both create things. I create clothes, Ivan creates music. And here Ivan is today on my show. So there you go. That's as much as a link as I'm going to give you for now.
I also wear clothes too, so we're related in that way.
He also wears clothes. Kind of dresses how I tend to dress in my spare time, but most people will know me for being in a 3-piece suit, shirt and tie almost all the time. I have to say though, I got this really awesome pair of boots, kind of biker style boots.
Yeah. And
that is my kind of normal, you can see my ink and stuff. That is my kind of normal. Okay. I'm way behind you. And I have actually. I still wear a shirt and tie. It's what I'm known for, but. I have started to dress from the ground up to make sure that I can wear these boots as much as I possibly can.
Sure.
They're so awesome. They're so...
I understand that completely. 100% I understand that impulse.
Yeah. So I do tend to be in jeans quite a lot more these days than before.
Well,
but I also blame it on the weather as well because it's pretty cold here. Although I'm guessing it's not as cold as it is out there, right?
It got pretty chilly yesterday. Yeah, it was in the 30s yesterday. But and like you, I was in a suit and tie. Why only yesterday? Because that was the costume for the job. So that's what we do as required. We dress for the job.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, you're absolutely right. Of course, you're going to have jobs where you can't just kind of be in, one of your skeleton skull kind of t-shirts and ripped jeans and stuff. You're going to be dressed up, and especially when you're doing the kind of Broadway stuff and some of the clubs that you play as well, right?
Not the nightclubs so much, but I do a lot of function band work. So when you're playing weddings, funerals, and bar mitzvahs, it's all in a black suit with a white shirt with a black tie. That's kind of standard costume. And then the Broadway shows, it depends whether the roles involve you being on stage or not. That's when costuming is being involved. I'm learning the book now, 15 years into the run. I'm finally learning the book for Jersey Boys. And that's going to be a black shirt, black suit, black tie, all black kind of on stage, because we are on stage for a certain moment in the show. Couple moments in the show. Last night, Ain't Too Proud, the Temptations musical, they do a pretty interesting thing. It's a big reveal at the end of the show for the finale, the curtain call, and the bows. The entire 16-piece orchestra is on stage. We're all wearing cream white suits, black shirts, cream ties. We're all playing white or black instruments, and we're all dancing choreography in sync that we've had to learn for this show. So there's a costume, designer, and we all have our own, suits that we have to put on at intermission to sort of, for the big reveal on stage. When the LED wall goes up and there's a 16-piece orchestra in white suits, it's a big impact moment in the show,
Yeah, I can imagine it's a complete sight to behold. How is it for you? I mean, how does the costuming work for those shows? Do you have someone that comes to fit you, like someone like me, I would guess, or some kind of costume designer or whatever? Because you need to be able to play in these things as well.
That's correct. A Broadway show, all of them have in-house costume, not designers so much, but wardrobe chiefs that make sure, because the entire cast is constantly changing clothes for the whole thing. So in this situation, they've now extended it to include the band as well, because there's a huge on-stage moment like that. So, yeah, you have to go in for a fitting. You get well measured, this, that, and the other thing, length, breadth, and width. And then I'm a substitute musician, so I'm only there once or twice a month kind of thing. But because my dimensions are kind of unique. I'm 6'5".
You're very tall. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I have my own designated substitute cream white suit. They probably don't share that with anybody else, I think, And then there are other musicals that I've been, like Rock of Ages. That was an onstage role, but they dressed us up to look like 80s hair metal rock band dirtbags, So I had to take off my black T-shirt and put on their black T-shirt. I had to take off my black jeans and put on their black jeans, that kind of thing. That one wasn't a huge stretch. Hedwig and the Angry Inch, that was an onstage role as well. They kind of dressed me up to look like Joey Ramone, basically, with the biker jacket and a striped T-shirt and aviator glasses and kind of thing. So it depends on the show as to what. I did the show Once on This Island too. I don't know if you ever heard about that one or saw that one, but it's set on a Caribbean island that's just recently been devastated by a hurricane. So they had us. I was wearing. Basically, your clothes are sort of like, ruined castaway items. I'm wearing like a shorts and T-shirts, but the T-shirt's distressed and it's got crap all over it and paint and, they made you to look like a refugee, a castaway or something, and that was the costume. So it depends on the show. It depends on the set design, the costume design as to what, how formal the thing is. They really tried to dress us way, way down for that one, on purpose.
Yeah, no, I bet. I thank you so much for sending over your book, which is an incredible story, really.
My pleasure. I'm glad you enjoyed it, man.
And it is a literal roller coaster, but also it wasn't like a typical kind of musician type rock and roll memoir. There was so many lessons that I took from that, and anyone, I highly recommend it. We'll get into that later in the episode, and I'll have all of the links in the show notes. For people really have to check it out, because anyone who's, especially people who are working for themselves, and we all go through, the highs are high, the lows can be really, really low, and you don't hold anything back in there. Like, this is the first time that you and I have met face to face, quote unquote. But I really, really feel like I got to know you through your writing. Like, you write the way that you're speaking to me right now. So I really, really connected with it. And I'm getting emotional right now. It got me very emotional at points as well. There are many of your stories that you can relate to your own life, and so much stuff that you've been through that you share. And times that were really, really hard for you. And you faced so much rejection, as a lot of people in performing arts do.
Of course, yes.
But you never, ever gave up. I mean, the fact you're sitting there talking to me from is that the apartment that your bass guitar bought? Yeah,
it is.
That's incredible. Yeah. We'll talk about that too. But the book kind of opens with really, really nice testimonials from, so many famous people. It's crazy. But, Lady Miss Keir from D-Light, Gloria Gaynor. Dude, there's a really great, funny little joke that you tell where, you say Paul McCartney once told you never to drop names. Now, by the way, I don't actually know Paul McCartney. It's a joke. But, you could literally just name drop for an hour straight.
Oh, I think I do in the book, don't I? It's like...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I say that I'm not supposed to, and then I can immediately proceed to do exactly that. Oh, I know this person, I know that person. But in my defense, those are all people that I've worked with and encountered in life. So it's not like I'm sort of inflating my own ego so much that it all happened. It's all I have the receipts for all of it.
Exactly. So I guess if we go back to the beginning. So you're originally from Tennessee, from a place called, now forgive me if I've mispronounced it, Chattanooga?
That's the one.
Which I've never heard of. I've heard of Nashville, obviously. Yeah. I'm trying to think of other places in Tennessee that I've actually heard of.
You've heard of Memphis.
Memphis, Tennessee.
Yes, you have.
Absolutely.
Very famously in the song. And then the next largest city is Knoxville, Tennessee. And Chattanooga is the fourth largest city in Tennessee. It's not a huge place. Only 125,000 people or so when I grew up. But there are some musical people and some legendary things that came from there. Bessie Smith, the blues singer, came from Chattanooga, Tennessee. Jimmy Blanton, who was the bass player for Duke Ellington in the 40s, came from Chattanooga, Tennessee. Not very well known outside of the bass world. And then more famously, the Impressions. Who went on to move to Chicago and went on to join up with Curtis Mayfield and had quite an illustrious career. They originally came from Chattanooga, Tennessee. It's also the home of the moon pie and the place where the tow truck was invented. And that is the entire pedigree of Chattanooga, Tennessee, as far as I know it to this day.
Yeah, well, I think just for the tow truck alone, we owe Chattanooga a huge debt, right?
They have a tow truck museum there now, which you can go and enjoy when you finally make it. Also, some very decisive battles from the American Civil War were fought there. So if you're a Civil War buff, it's a great place to explore and see all the monuments and the history there. But that war kind of ended badly. I don't know if you heard. It didn't go well, The side of righteousness came forth, thank God, but it was very bloody and very, the place where I grew up, let's put it that way, they were on the wrong side of history, so that's kind of the legacy I grew up sort of in the shadow of, and I was very happy to get out from under it,
Yeah, exactly. What was it like as a child there? For all intents and purposes, is it your mum? Your mum was Jewish, and your mum is Jewish, and your dad is the atheist.
Yes.
So I got that the right way round. Because it wasn't immediately obvious when you read that passage in the book.
Yeah.
But I kind of figured, well, he chose to, when his mum and dad split up, Ivan chooses to go live with his dad.
Yeah, yeah.
And his dad, being the atheist, was probably more suited to his kind of rock and roll music, artistic kind of tendencies. But I don't know if that... I mean, is that the reason why? Or is it because mum was...
Not necessarily. The passage you're talking to, I said I'm the child of a secular Jew and a devout atheist. That's sort of the line that I give people when they start asking me about religious studies. And the thing is, because of that, we were my brother and I were kind of raised with no existential dilemma whatsoever. So the religious thing was never a question for me. It's like, do you believe in God? I'm like, no, it's not an issue. So I focused on other things. Choosing to live with my dad, I think he was just kind of more of a supportive parental kind of force in general. Not that my mother wasn't, but I think he was more so. And I think I recognized that earlier. Sort of, he was gonna nurture me to sort of become more of a free spirit, and she was going to nurture me to become an extension of her life. Which is, again, fine. My brother and I both turned out fine in the end. But it just seemed like the move at the time. And I don't know, as a 12-year-old person, how I recognized that. But I definitely made that choice, and I'm happy I did. It worked out.
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally. I mean, going through your schooling and, kind of being threatened violently all the time... It's something that I totally related to, because I grew up in a pretty rough neighborhood, part of South London, and I was in one of the roughest schools. I think we were in the top 10 most violent schools in the country at the time. There was actually, I mean, when in national news, there's an actual chart or ranking that's produced, that it's a pretty serious problem. But for me, I don't know if similar for you, being I guess for all intents and purposes a Jewish kid in Tennessee, because there wouldn't have been many people like you, right, around that time.
That was definitely a minority view. I mean, the school I went to was not dangerous at all in terms of that, in terms of societally or neighborhood wise. It was very, very posh, but it was 100 kids in my class. There were 2 Jewish kids. I think there was 1 or 2 black kids in our school. Mm-hmm. So it's 98% white, Christian, male. And I just didn't fit that mold. I just didn't, and and they let me know it all the time. So it kind of set me on a path to sort of all right, if that's what's happening, I'm going to go elsewhere and not try to sort of fit in. Because when you first get there, you want to fit in. It's like, I want to sort of be a part of this. What are we wearing? What are we doing? Who do we hang out with? And it was just immediately apparent to me that I was not welcome in that crowd. So, I kind of went my own way, and it's fine. Again, these experiences shape us. They make us who we are. And again, in no way comparable to the school that you went to, but it definitely set me on that path to sort of, be my own person, I think.
Yeah, I mean, at my school was basically, you had, I remember there was one kid in particular that, brought a gun to school, in Spanish class. He made a point of showing it to me. It was loaded as well, because he, unhooked the chamber of, you can see I don't know anything about guns. And, showed me that it was fully loaded and stuff. And, it was
I had a gun pulled on me in school.
Yeah, totally. And that kid didn't even get he didn't get into any serious trouble for it, right? Because
none at all.
The gun that he produced to give in to them was they confiscated a fake gun, right? But what he pulled on you was a real one.
It certainly looked real when he was looking down the business end of it, and what he gave them was a BB gun. And I think I know the difference. You know what I mean? Like he's looking down the barrel of something that shoots a pellet versus something that shoots a bullet on. But I was never able to verify it. And even if it was a fake gun, the way in which he used it was not fake at all. And there was no repercussions in those days for that kid. He graduated the same as I did. We're all good.
Well, I think the moral of the story is that it doesn't matter where you go, whether it's a great school or a rough school or whatever, is that kids have got the potential. Human beings do have the potential to be assholes. As much as they do also have the potential to be great.
That's right.
And, I'm kind of, I think you're the same as well, is that I've grown up kind of learning from those experiences and trying to use them in a way that is positive for me, rather than being angry about the way that I grew up, because that just expends too much energy, and I would much rather be someone who lives my life seeing the best in people, no matter how bad they get,
right?
Than someone who's always suspicious of people or sees the worst in people, because that's just an exhausting way to live.
It is, and I'll say two things about that. One, when I meet somebody new, excuse me, I always give them the benefit of the doubt. Like when I have, I treat everybody as a blank slate, and then until they sort of prove themselves otherwise. And sometimes that doesn't take very long at all. It takes a sentence or two. You're like, okay, no, I'm done with you. And then the other thing that I say, and this is a joke, but it's only halfway a joke. The thing that social media, Facebook especially, Instagram, the thing that it's mostly good for is to make sure that the kids I went to high school know that my life is better than theirs. I just want to lead by examples like, oh yeah, because I know that they all, got desk jobs and have had probably bypass surgery by now, whatever else. I just need to know that. I just need them to know that my life is better than theirs, and then we're mission accomplished. And again, I'm only halfway kidding with that.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. So where did your start in music begin?
It was kind of fitful and kind of late. As a young person in elementary school, I sort of dabbled in some instruments like viola and guitar and piano, but nothing really stuck. Nothing really sort of, I think piano was the one that lasted the longest. I probably took piano lessons for a full 6 months or something, but nothing really stuck. I knew I was intensely interested in music because, listening to music was kind of my refuge, especially when you feel completely ostracized by everyone around you. You can kind of retreat to listening to FM radio or albums that you got or whatever. And then when I was 17 years old, that's when I first picked up the bass guitar. I was a senior in high school. So there was no music program at all in this, very snooty, prestigious, school that I went to, believe it or not. They've since developed one, but at the time it was kind of on your own. So I had to find a guy who graduated a couple of years ahead of me, and he was a bass player, and he had he taught privately. So, I started taking lessons for $15 a week, and figuring things out on my own, and not sort of realizing that was going to turn into a career at all. So, only having played for a year, by the time you go off to university, you're in no way willing to make the commitment to go to music school. I went to engineering school first, and I ended up with a psychology degree in the end of it. And then I didn't go to music school until much, much later. I already had a career in the music business, and then gave that up and then went back to school kind of thing. So I came to it very late. And I think because the fact that I was mostly self-taught is sort of what kind of motivated me to pursue it more.
Yeah.
Because I think if I'd had all those, high school band experience and everywhere, the marching band or whatever is typical for people, I might have burned out earlier. It's possible. I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah. There's a passage in the book where you talk about the, I don't know if it was your first ever visit to New York, but you were visiting your mum's family in New York City. And I think it's your aunt who was a producer.
You're right. My mother's family's from New York. So as such, we would come to visit probably maybe once a year as a kid growing up. And it's a lot of the reason why I moved here, because I always felt sort of comfortable here. We have extended family here, and I was familiar because I would see it. So my aunt, she was not a producer, but a good friend of hers was a former publicist, I think, for Warner Brothers Records. and she had an apartment full of vinyl. It was like shelf after shelf, wall to wall of vinyl, vinyl, vinyl. I'm like, what the heck? How do you have all this vinyl? She said, oh, we get it all for free. Because in those days, they would exchange the promotional copies of the records among the different people at the label. And then, because these were people that were promoting product and making phone calls and calling newspapers and radio stations and all this kind of stuff. So they had all those records, and she had like duplicate copies of things and gave me like a package of like 15 LPs of like hugely influential stuff. I'm trying to remember what it was, like, Gang of Four and Devo and Elvis Costello. And like, this was like mind expanding to a kid, a kid in the 70s, And then to realize that there was such a thing as free vinyl in the world. What is that? How do I get that? Like, that's the business I want to be in, when you get free records, because I knew I loved going to the record store and just like going through the stacks we used to do, like that was sort of like an afternoon off, was going to the store to see what was new and see what albums you were coveting, this album and that album, So that probably, as much as anything else, led to a whole career in the music business. It was like trying to collect free vinyl.
Yeah, because you suddenly spotted an opportunity, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
I'm just trying to just have a quick look at my notes here to make sure I don't get anything wrong. But I mean, you kind of realised, I can't find them. You realised that there was all this surplus vinyl flying around that you could get your hands on for free.
Right, and they were sending it to all the local radio stations. So in Chattanooga, Tennessee, I decided, like, well, they're getting free vinyl, and the top 40 rock station plays 40 songs because that's their format, right? So, but they're getting pitched and sent all stuff beyond that. And I know that they have like stacks and stacks of surplus vinyl. So I somehow got the hubris. I don't know where I got this. And I said, I'm going to call the program director at the radio station, and I'm going to offer him a service. The service I'm offering is, I'm going to take off your hands all of your old discarded vinyl that you don't want, the stuff that you're not playing. I'm going to provide you this service. I don't know why I thought this was something that he needed, but I'll take this vinyl off your hands. And shockingly, the guy said, okay, yeah, come on over. And he gave me my first trip was like maybe 100 LPs, so then and it was 100 LPs again that they weren't playing. But it was stuff that was, more new wave and more interesting and more punk rock, that stuff that I was into. But it also kind of gave me the skill, excuse me, I had to go through sort of audition them, so like I'd see a bunch of labels of stuff that I didn't know. You could sell a bunch of stuff you didn't want immediately. You could throw those out, and I go through and maybe weed out half of them. Then the rest of them, you kind of had to do needle drops on. You put them on and sort of like play a couple of seconds of this song, a couple of seconds of that song, to sort of see what the band is, what the artistic vision is, what the sound is, and see, is that something I'm interested in? So it kind of trained me in how to sort of like quickly understand what an artist was presenting and whether that was something that I found interesting or not. And that skill set served me later on when I became, a radio programmer myself at university. And then also as I got into the music business after that, became a publicist,
Yeah.
So it was sort of like unconscious early training about how do you sort of sort through a stack of vinyl to find, the 20 pieces. If you got 100 vinyl, maybe the 20 pieces that you want to actually retain for the library. And then I don't remember what I did with the rest of it. I gave some of them to kids at school and probably tossed a bunch of them out. But this was an ongoing relationship with this radio programmer. There's actually a couple of them in town. Like, every couple of months I would call him up and he'd go, yeah, come on over. And it was just like, it was mind expanding, mind blowing. Like, wow, I'm getting free vinyl,
Yeah, but at this stage, you still don't play any kind of instrument, right? You hadn't settled on bass. You didn't play drums.
That's right.
You didn't own an instrument at this stage either. No,
not at all. No, but again, I was intensely interested in music and recorded music, especially, obviously. So that sort of like formed the whole impetus to try to get into it. And then I remember a couple of key moments why the bass specifically started to speak to me, like seeing Rick James live on television was like, yeah, I want to do that, whatever that is. And there was another band from Atlanta called Mother's Finest that were having they had some pretty big hits in Europe and some big hits on sort of regional rock radio, although I seem to find people in the Northeast don't seem to know who they are these days as much as people, but everybody down south knew exactly who they were. It was a funk rock band from Atlanta, Georgia. So I remember seeing them in concert and going like, yes, I don't know what that is, but I definitely want to do that. So that sort of having those kind of moments coupled with all the vinyl collecting kind of made me decide, I think my dad asked me what I wanted for my birthday, my senior year in high school. I said, bass lessons. That's what I wanted. And I didn't have a bass. I didn't own a bass. So I started studying with my friend Rick, who I'm friends with to this day. And he ended up selling me his used Fender Precision bass for $425. I still have the receipt.
That's missing a crucial small part of the story, which is where you got the money to pay for that bass, because your father didn't get that for you, did he?
No. I washed dishes for a whole summer at a dude ranch in Colorado in the Rocky Mountains. It was called the Rainbow Trout Lodge. So like guests would pay to ride horses and
fish trout.
And fish trout, right? In these stocked streams. It was like literally shooting fish in a barrel. They were throwing the fish in, and the customers were pulling the fish out. And I was washing dishes for 100 people for 3 meals a day. I don't even remember how I got this job. It was one of those things where you see a listing in the back of a magazine or something, and it was a summer job, and I saved up all my dishwashing money and bought a Fender bass for $425.
Wow. So your father buys you music lessons with your friend Rick.
Yeah.
Rick, now you've got your bass.
Yeah.
And Rick teaches you to play that thing by ear. So you didn't learn to read music? You just
Not until much later. Much later, yeah.
So he was playing records for you and basically getting you to learn the songs.
Yes.
Just by listening and playing around.
And by demonstrating, showing me with his hands, like, here's the pattern that you make for a C scale, and here's the pattern that you make for, this song or that song. And it developed my ear. But also, I've taught bass lessons to people. And you can see sort of, by how they approach it, whether they're really motivated to kind of stick with it if they practice in between lessons. Like I've had students who the only time they play bass is the hour of the week that I'm with them.
Yeah.
The rest of the time, they don't touch the instrument. They don't look at it. Right. And for whatever reason, I was very motivated. I was very into it. So I really was trying to all the things that Rick was teaching me, I was learning, and practicing and trying to master and trying to sort of, I got into a band at my high school within 6 months, I think. You get functional. A bass guitar, it's only 4 strings. You're only playing one note at a time. You can get functional playing Louie Louie pretty fast.
Yeah.
It takes a lifetime to sort of master it, get good at it. But you can get into a band really fast, and I did, and it again led to this sort of performing at a talent show in high school. This is a high school full of people who actively hated me. So when you're on stage at the talent show, and the band did very well, we sounded great. I actually heard some recordings of it not too long ago, and we sounded really good for a high school band. Then you have a high school gymnasium full of people erupting into applause at something you've just done. I'm like, that's a shift from how they've been treating me my entire life, my entire career. Perhaps I should pursue that, as a means to being accepted by people. And that lesson sort of really resonated with me, has stayed with me to this day. Not that I'm sort of seeking acceptance anymore, because I don't really care what anybody thinks, but it definitely sets you on a path. You realize oh yeah, something different happens when you stand on stage and perform a piece of music. It affects people emotionally, in a palpable sort of way. So I recognized that very early on.
Yeah. And you set some goals for yourself, which again in the book you very honestly say I didn't achieve any of them, but setting those goals and going for them just helped you to experience and to achieve a whole bunch of other stuff.
Yes. Yes, I knew for a fact that I was going to play on the late night TV shows like David Letterman and The Tonight Show, Saturday Night Live. I was going to play at Madison Square Garden. This is my career goals, and I've done absolutely none of those things have happened. A lot of other things have happened, but those specific things, I was like, I'm definitely going to play on Saturday Night Live. Nope, never happened. And I was at Madison Square Garden the other day. But you know what? This is interesting. We can tie this all together. My friend Rick, who taught me how to play bass, he's now the advanced stage manager for this giant country artist named Luke Combs, who's now headlining arenas. He sold out two nights at Madison Square Garden. And Rick took me on the tour of the rig, and I got to see underneath the stage and the guitar tech and all. He even gave me a Luke Combs pick.
Oh, wow.
My friend Rick.
I've not heard of that guy, but I've kind of been getting into country music a lot recently, weirdly. I don't know why. Yeah. But I've got stuff like Chris Stapleton. I have like a best of Chris Stapleton playlist on almost constant repeat. And there's another dude called Darren Neurenberger. I can't pronounce his name. Ghost Town, one of his oh man. Awesome. So but I need to check Luke. What's his name? Luke
Combs. C-O-M-B-S. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna check him out.
Yeah, I think you'll dig it.
My further country education.
And to be honest with you, I'd only peripherally heard of him myself because I'm not super well versed in the country music market, which is a completely different market, different genre. I definitely heard of him. But
you're called Funkboy for a reason, Ivan.
Yes, of course. And I've played with some country stars, But when I heard he was my friend Rick was coming to town, and I said, where are you guys playing? He's like, oh, Madison Square Garden. They sold out 2 nights. I'm like, Jesus, I didn't realize that he'd gotten to that level. And P.S. He's ending the arena tour this month, and next year he's going out. He's going to be headlining stadiums. This is sports arenas. When he comes to London, he'll be playing at Wembley Arena. For 80,000 people.
So Wembley Arena is because we live. You've been, and I know you've been to London. We will talk about London because
yes.
some of your terrible experiences in your career seem to at least 3 or 4 have been in my country, and
sure.
I want to talk about that, but I also want to apologize to you as well for whatever aura it is that we have. That when you cross the force field, we lose your guitar, or give you some shitty accommodation or something.
No, the guy that stole all that money from me in London was an American, so you're safe there. No worries.
So where I live in northwest London, so we're in Cricklewood, and you can. So we're not far from Wembley Stadium. You can see the arch from where we are.
Nice.
Which on nights when there's a gig or when there's a football game or something, they light the arch up now. Yeah, you can. If it depends, but sometimes if it's quiet, then you can just, especially on FA Cup final day, and also when the Foo Fighters played Wembley, because that was one of the biggest crowds that I think they rammed about 80,000 people.
Wow.
And that was at that time. I think it was in 2008 the Foos played Wembley, because that was when they were touring the Echo, Silence, Patience and Grace. I think it was that album. But and we went to one of those nights and literally just blew my head off. It was amazing. It was so good. They're one of my favorite bands. And another great night was at the Brixton Academy. I don't know if you've been there. Such a great venue. So we saw Velvet Revolver.
Great.
What was the name? Was it Scott Weiland? Is it Scott Weiland? Yeah. Yes. So he sadly died a few years ago. But we were just lucky. So one of my ambitions in life was to see Slash do a solo. And I never got to see Guns N' Roses. I loved them as a teenager. And so we saw Velvet Revolver at the Brixton Academy. Nice. And I think that's definitely up in my top 3 or 4 gigs in my life. Yeah. We came out, my ears were still ringing the next day. But Slash, he got into this, he got into a solo. Yeah. And I'm forward in my seat because I'm this is something ticked off the bucket list.
Sure.
But he went into a You've met him, right?
I have not met him. I've been accused of being him many times. But
okay.
We've not actually encountered each other in the flesh yet. Not yet.
You've met so many people. I kind of just in that second, there was something in my brain saying, "You idiot, don't say that," because he hasn't met him. I'm like, no, I'm sure I saw a picture of Ivan with Slash in his little kind of collection. Well, yeah, I figured the percentage probability was on my side, and I just completely screwed that one up. But yeah, so Slash starts this solo, right?
Yeah.
About 2 minutes in, so the band leave the stage to let him get on with it.
Sure.
So then he's got the audience eating out the palm of his hand. Absolutely amazing. And he's doing all sorts of things with his Les Paul that I could only dream of doing. Holding it above his head, behind his head, around his back, and so on. Anyway, we're about 8 minutes in now.
Wow.
And he's just chain smoking. I don't even know how he was changing the cigarettes because I don't remember seeing it. And then gradually, so Duff and the other band members gradually come on stage because they're getting ready to do the next number that this solo's meant to lead into.
Right, sure.
And I'm really sorry. Is it okay if I tell you this story? Because I don't really get to tell anybody this story. All my listeners are rolling their eyes right now. So they all come back on stage and they're all getting ready. So they're taking their positions because he's meant to be leading into the next track. He just carries on. So then now we're about 11 minutes in.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine?
That's a lot of stage time. That's a lot of time.
So the band members all just start lighting up cigarettes. And this is after we introduce the smoking ban.
Right. Oh, great. Yeah, of course.
So totally rock and roll. And but I mean, what do you expect when you've got 3 original members of Guns N' Roses and you've got the lead singer of the Stone Temple Pilots in the building, right? I mean, they're not going to give 2 Fs. So they all start chain smoking. He must have gone for about 17, 18 minutes. And in the end, Duff had to go over to him and just break him out of it. But it was incredible.
We got to get on with the show, mate.
Yeah. Exactly, that's it. And speaking of getting on with the show, we need to get back to you. But I just wanted to relay that. It was just, amazing.
No, I appreciate that because I that's what it's all about, having moments like that when you see these transcendent moments on stage. It's part of my career trying to get there on the stage side. And as a fan, too, I've seen those things as well. And you just they stay with you. They stay with you. And that's what makes music so powerful.
Have there been any memorable moments when you've been supporting bands that you've played with, where you've been on stage and, the lead guitarist or whatever is just taken off?
Oh, yeah, all the time. It happened last night.
Oh, wow.
It goes on all the time. When people sort of get into the zone, and especially there's certain jobs you have more elbow room to do that. Some shows are very regimented and it's, everything is verse, chorus, and you're out. There's very little, or the solo is going to be 8 measures only and that's it. Some of these pop gigs are very tightly controlled. Mm-hmm. And then some of them, like Velvet Revolver, or like the gig I did last night with the funk band, it's wide open. So if a guitar player gets into his zone, he can be off. Like we're just playing a groove behind him, and he's going for as long as he feels like it. Yeah. And occasionally we had a singer sit in last night. He was doing sort of a James Brown thing, he was doing James Brown. He was doing, we were covering Sex Machine and a couple other things, and he was just going on and on and on. We finally had to sort of like tap him on the back, go like, hey, we gotta move on with this show. You sound great. Thanks for sitting in. We gotta go. Yeah. That happens quite a bit. People get in the zone, and sometimes you appreciate it if they're, if somebody like Slash is creating something magical, you just want to watch them. Like that's great. The singer last night had overstayed his welcome, and we needed to tell him that. But that happens too,
Yeah, well, I can imagine. I did see a video with Slash once where he was kind of showing how he puts a solo together. Yeah. And the incredible thing is that I'm guessing he could probably just make it up on the spot, but he was explaining that most of his solo riffs are really very, very well rehearsed. And to get to that that speed it's not a natural thing. It's something that he practices and practices and practices and practices, and then he gets faster and faster and faster and faster, just like my voice is right now. And then eventually, that's where the kind of long-winded solo is born for him.
Yeah, we all have a bag of tricks that we do, and these riffs you're talking about are patterns that we use. They become part of our vocabulary. So we all have them. We all have these sort of core things that we can always default to, that we can build up to, that we can go back on. The thing that, I ended up getting a jazz degree, from Berklee College of Music. Mm-hmm. So studying with those guys, the idea for solos kind of comes from the compositional idea, where you sort of have, if you think about an old blues song, it's statement, variation on the statement. So it's theme, variation, theme, A, B, that kind of thing. So you can create your solos the same sort of way. You play a theme, repeat it, and then do a variation on it. And then using that sort of thing, you can really sort of give people something to hang their ears on, and they'll go with you on a very long journey, like Mr. Slash can do. You can, if you really structure these things in a way, and even though you have a bag of tricks, okay, this pentatonic riff is going to work, when I build up to this a little, that kind of thing. You can keep people with you. You can really engage for a long period of time if you structure things like that, And it pertains to so many things in life, but, it's specific to, building an improvised, quote unquote, musical solo.
Yeah. And when you look at bands, the last gig we saw pre-pandemic was Muse. And they were incredible live. Yeah. Again, what you were just describing there, they just take to the nth degree. I mean, their bag of tricks is enormous.
Right. It helps.
Yeah. But to play with that level of complexity, but with also that precision, it's just mind-blowing to me.
It's like building a vocabulary for language, the more words that you can speak and the more syllables you can use in your words, the smarter you're going to sound. Yeah. And it's the same thing with music, you have this vocabulary, and it's only built on the same 12 notes. We all have the same 12 notes on the piano that we play. So how do you combine those, and what patterns that you use to combine those sort of can make you sound like you know what you're doing, or or possibly that you don't, depending on how you've applied yourself.
Yeah, totally. So you once played a gig where some billionaire in Mexico had you playing on what can only be described as a potential health and safety nightmare.
Yes.
And you called that chapter of the book, because it was an Acapulco, right? And you felt like it was going to be so it was Catapulco. Have I got that right?
You've got it exactly right. And as you recall, I actually have a photo of it in the book, because after I describe it, you're going I don't know, man. So I'm I brought the receipts. Here's the photo. Here's the stage. It was a stage that was built so that half of it was suspended in midair about 40 feet above the street below. And it kind of had a 45-degree angle cantilever below it, holding the thing onto the side of the wall. And it just looked absolutely precarious.
But you guys had no idea, right? So some billionaire in Mexico has basically got Gloria Gaynor and band, which you're part of, to play at his house at some party. Yeah. And that was the other thing as well. He had a DJ there that was playing techno. And then all of a sudden you got Gloria Gaynor, kind of, where do the two things connect? They just don't, right? So
it did not work out well. It was sort of like this party full of revelers who were kind of looking at this lovely older African-American lady who had a hit in the 70s and kind of scratching their heads when can we dance again? They're waiting the whole gig. They're waiting to hear I Will Survive. The gig should have been 15 minutes long. She should have done 4 of her biggest disco hits and got out. That would have been the right thing to program that party. But again, the billionaire wanted to flex and show that he could afford this wonderful entertainer from America with her 12-piece band and blah, blah, blah. So, we were standing on this very precarious, kind of bouncy. The stage didn't feel like it was that super solid, and performing this whole, I think probably did a 75-minute show or something. to a group of people who were largely indifferent because they hadn't paid to see her. They were just at this billionaire's party and they wanted to, dance to the techno. Mm-hmm. Very odd evening. It was a very odd evening.
Any other memorable gigs for the wrong reasons?
Oh, dozens. I mean, I only put a few in the book.
We have to say, I'm asking you this, Ivan, and what a lot of our listeners will not know is that you're probably pound for pound one of the busiest musicians in the world, because how many gigs do you perform on average, or have you performed on average a year over the last kind of dozen years? What, 280, 320, somewhere in that range?
Yeah,
a year?
High 200s, it went down a little bit because of the pandemic, that hurt my averages. So my average probably dropped to 260 because of that. But yeah, over the last 4 years.
Let's go pre-pandemic average.
Yeah.
So forget COVID.
270, 280 a year. Yeah, it's like having a 5-day-a-week full-time job.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. And then obviously you might have a few days off, and then, like yesterday, you had 3 gigs in a 24-hour period.
Correct. That is how it bounces, and it's feast or famine. You can't really schedule it out unless you have a regular gig, like working on a Broadway show, something where you're going to be there eight shows a week. But I've only ever had a chair on an off-Broadway production one time. Every time since then I've been like a substitute. So you never know. Like the Temptations musical I did last night, I got the call 2 days ago. So you just never know. It's very difficult to schedule your life around that.
Yeah. Speaking of disasters and musicals, just to kind of bring it back to the question, so we never got Spider-Man on Broadway over here.
Oh no, did you not? Oh,
I think because it was so bad, apparently. But you're going to tell me the truth in a minute because you were actually there.
I was there.
So the news that we got from the UK was that Spider-Man was so bad that it got kind of canned after a few weeks. So what was that like?
It was the most expensive Broadway musical in history, and it's probably the most infamous Broadway musical in history. And the reason it was infamous is twofold. One, they had kind of 2 productions of it. There was a Spider-Man 1.0 and a Spider-Man 2.0. It was not going well. So they retooled the shop, rewrote it, rearranged it. This is all during previews. The thing, quote unquote, previewed for like 8 months or 10 months or something ridiculous. So it ended up actually being okay. I saw it one time from the house and I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun to see. It wasn't like, it was a comic book sort of thing. So it wasn't a very deep philosophical kind of musical. And then the other thing was there were some very infamous, very unfortunate injuries that happened on set. And that's sort of what made the international news. Yeah. That's what you heard about, And that was too bad because like one of the guys that got hurt was an aerialist, and his job is to hang from wires and trapezes. That's what he does for a living. And unfortunately, he got dropped from quite a great height, and as he was falling through the air, he realized that he needed to not land on his back. And he had the wherewithal, because he was an aerialist, so like he knew he needed to twist his body to land on his feet. He broke 10 bones. He was in the hospital, and he realized he was not paralyzed. So he said, as soon as I am out of here, I'm going immediately back to work. And he did. And he flew as a Spider-Man. He was the principal Spider-Man flyer every day.
Yeah.
His name was Christopher Tierney. His name is Christopher Tierney. Lovely guy. He's like the sweetest guy. He was the first guy who sort of made me feel welcome when I went into that pit to sort of, sub and be asked to do it. So it was one of those things where it was both beautiful and terrible to behold, because it was, again, a giant spectacle. There were people flying above your head. The music was all written by Bono and The Edge. Mm-hmm. So it was interesting. It was really interesting. But, as a theatrical business success story, not so much.
Yeah, it's an ambitious thing to pull off. And, we joke about it. But, obviously we joke about everything over in this country. But, you look at the amount of effort that goes into producing a show like that, any piece of art, and the disappointment through the entire team, from the musicians to the performers. That poor guy, literally breaking his back for his art. And then, for that, because presumably you were booked for part of that show or for a full run?
Well, again, I was one of the substitute musicians on bass, so they would call me as needed whenever the regular player. In fact, this is a phenomenon with all the Broadway pit musicians. Like almost every chair has 5 subs, so they can take off up to, because of the musicians union contract, they can take off up to 50% of the shows and still retain their chair. So if somebody has a touring gig, they can go tour, come back. It's kind of a great contract. So I was one of 5 substitute bass players, and actually there are 2 bass players in the pit, believe it or not, because of some other very long-winded stories that weren't very important. So I ended up doing probably 45 performances over there over the course of maybe 2 years, the last 2 years of the run. So I was there quite a bit. I wasn't the regular guy, but I felt very much a part of the Spider-Man family by the end of it,
Yeah, no, I bet. And how far in advance, when you're going to, let's call you second chair on a musical, how far in advance do you get the music to actually learn?
The way it typically works is sort of like when they've agreed to have you on as second chair, or in my case, fifth chair, whatever it is, they give you the music, they give you a show recording and/or often lately they give you a video of the conductor camera, because there's usually a live video feed going within the band these days. So they give that to you and they say, "Call me when you're ready."
Right.
So that can be, sometimes you have a date, like sometimes you're given a deadline, like I need you by within 2.5 weeks. That's the most extreme assignment I've ever gotten. But usually you have 3 weeks, a month, something like that. And when you're ready, you call them and then you go in.
Yeah. So one of, actually, I'm not going to talk about this right now. I want to just still skip back because there are some, I think, if you look up the word trier in the dictionary, your picture would be there. There are lots of other words in the dictionary your picture would be next to as well. But again, you do focus quite a lot on things that didn't happen for you.
Right.
Which actually is not as kind of negative as you might think on the surface, because actually what it shows is that, that's exactly what you have to keep doing. I mean, that's how my business was built.
Sure.
I probably have to get hundreds and hundreds of no's every week to be able to do some level of what I do. And it's been the same for you as well. But I mean, you've had some amazing gigs that you didn't actually get, right? Rod Stewart.
Oh yeah,
Santana.
I've lost some giant gigs. Yeah.
But you even take it a step further, because you don't just list them. You actually then give an explanation of why you didn't get them.
Right. It's the nature of any creative field. There's a whole bunch of people who kind of want to do what we do, whether it's, designing clothes or playing bass on a concert stage. There's a whole bunch of people who want to do it. And there's a whole bunch of people who sort of, there are very few kind of gatekeepers who are going to give you the opportunity to be able to hire you to do some of this stuff. So, just by the nature of the numbers, you're going to get rejection after rejection after rejection. And it's just part of it. It's not something you need to take personally. It's very often, if you think about sort of casting a dramatic role, there's a personality type and or a look that they're looking for the script, and you may or may not fit that type. And it's nothing personal. They need. What happened with Rock of Ages, they needed somebody who looked like an 80s dirtbag musician. And they looked at me and said, "You'll do. Come right over," So that's, it was a time and place. And then I happened to have the skill sets in place that they needed to perform that show. So it worked out. But yeah, if you're trying to pursue this, you're gonna fail way more than you're gonna succeed at this stuff.
Yeah. And a lot of people aren't, I guess, coming into the industry aren't prepared for that at all. Like nobody sits them down and says, "Listen, kid, you're going to get so much rejection. It's going to be so hard. And you've really got to prepare yourself for that, kind of still your stomach, and you've got to be ready for a fight.
You can't take it personally, even though sometimes it is very personal, and it's occasionally it's hard to avoid it because it is personal. But most of the time it's not. It's just like they're looking for something, a vibe, a look, a skill set that you may or may not be in the right place for at the right time. Yeah,
timing seems to be a common theme with this kind of stuff, because there's stuff that you've gone for before that you got, but then at the last minute they've cancelled you because the guy that you were meant to be stepping in for some big band has suddenly, recovered from whatever hangover he had, or suddenly appeared because he disappeared or whatever. Yeah. And then, you've got no control over that at all. But again, a lot of people will find it very, very difficult to cope with the roller coaster of emotions that comes with that you've got no control over it. You can be on a high 1 second because you think, great, I've got this gig, and then all of a sudden it's just snatched away from you. And it wasn't really because of anything that you did.
That's right. That's right. No, it's happened. It's happened many times, countless times. Like, you've been promised some big things, like, we're doing this and you're the guy, you're in, and then you find out the next day, like, oh, by the way, nope, sorry,
Yeah. You get it. And you get it in all walks of life. You get it in, in my business as well all the time. It'll be, I'm going to, I met this guy the other day and he's so-and-so, and this will be a really, really good introduction for you because it's going to lead for big things, and it's definitely nailed on. I'm going to hook you guys up, and he's got to get on great. I've spoken about, and then nothing happens, or you're due to go and see someone, and it's a big, it's a potentially big customer for me, and again, it's just taken away at the last second, and it's not really because of anything I did. It's just circumstance.
100%. You have to have high hopes and low expectations.
And you have to have the will to keep putting one foot forward in front of the other. From the very second that the worst thing happens, you can't let it knock the wind out of your sails. Yeah. You just got to say, so there's something I learned very early on that an old boss taught me, and he said, you know what you got to do? When you have a really, really bad thing happen to you or a bad day, you've just got to kind of look at it and say, if that's the worst thing that's going to happen to me today, I'm in pretty good shape. Right.
That's a very wise way to look at things. I've had things, usually I'm able to move past it. I definitely have felt some very keen disappointment at a few things that I was really, really wanted and didn't happen. And there was one particular firing that I experienced that really shook my confidence badly. Like it for some reason, it resonated within me. I'm like, because it was a job that I had been successful at for about a year, and then suddenly was let go, kind of without warning. And I was like, does that mean that I was fooling myself for the entire year, for my entire career? Do I really not know how to do this? And I had some similar jobs in other areas, that shook my confidence in those things that I'd been successful with on other gigs. Was suddenly questioning those. Like, am I not doing something right? Can you just be like cut loose at any moment? And it's a very minority situation where something like that happens, where it kind of just out of the blue, you just kind of like cut loose for no particular warning or explanation. But it does happen, and it can be very, it can lead to a lot of soul searching. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's you talk about feelings of low self-esteem when you were younger, and obviously that's not a thing anymore as you've grown up and matured and gone through all these experiences and become the wonderful person that you are today. But when you do have those, so can you shed any more light on the one that you just described as your worst knockback?
I don't know if that was the worst, but it was a bad one.
The one that you really, really wanted.
Oh, the one that I really, really wanted. There was an artist I was playing with. This is many, many years ago when I was just sort of first getting to New York and first trying to be a part of the scene. And this was an artist that I knew from my record company days. I'd actually sort of worked with him. He actually was in a platinum rock band. And then he sort of left that band. He was on his own, and this is going to be his solo career. And I was in his band. And we were writing music together. The band was writing collectively, and we did our first big performance opening for another band at a big nightclub in Manhattan, sold out show, packed to the rafters. And the show went okay. Wasn't great. And it wasn't bad, but it wasn't the level of energy that he had been performing at for the last, however many years of his career. So in sort of doing the post-mortem analysis, he decided that the problem was, I need to fire the bass player. And I was like, what? Based on what? We were poised to sign. He was signed to a major label. We were going to record an album, and this is my ticket to ride. To be in the industry and be at the platinum level. Rock and roll thing that I dreamed of my whole life. And we did one gig, and I got fired the next morning, and I was just completely gobsmacked. I didn't understand how was I responsible for the lackluster performance? I was the only one on the stage who had been to music school. It didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me either, because when I played in bands when I was younger, if we had a crappy gig or whatever, then the person we would fire first would be the drummer.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I would think so, but the drummer was one of his buddies. So, okay. What happened was I didn't understand at the time. It made no sense to me, and it really was this huge disappointment, career-wise, personally. I knew the guy too. It was something that was like having a dream in your grasp and then snatched away. But then what happened over the next several years or so is what I learned about this guy was anytime something was going poorly, somebody else in the band was going to get fired.
Okay, so he'd never look in the mirror. He'd always look elsewhere.
Turns out that's what happened. Yeah. So one by one, the whole band got fired. You're fired. You're fired. It took time, but I just happened to be the first guy out the door. It was kind of a roll of the dice, and it wasn't really any of our fault, or maybe it was collectively all of our faults equally. But yeah, I guess the material wasn't strong enough. The band wasn't quite strong enough. And I just happened to be the first one to get fired. But because I had no frame of reference on that, I was completely knocked back on my heels by it,
Yeah.
And it came to peace with it later, sort of knowing what I knew later, but at the time you're just completely shattered by it.
Yeah. And those situations, it can take a lot to pick you up off the floor, but I think it gets easier with time, because that obviously did happen when you were a lot younger.
Yeah.
And, I guess these days you almost kind of shrug when stuff happens. I mean, the last thing that knocked me for six was when our business got shut down last year because of what.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was on my butt for 6 weeks. I've never been like that before. And then eventually I got my head out of the proverbial and, started saying, well, people are still wearing clothes.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So that hasn't stopped. So, what can we do? Right, and I think that's what you've got to. That's what you've always got to do when you get kind of knocked flat. You've got to just try and pick yourself up and dust yourself off and say, right, okay, well that happened.
Yeah.
Was it anything I did? No. Okay.
You're right about that, and also you're right also that it does come with age and experience. Sort of these things are less catastrophic. But the one that I was alluding to 2 firings ago, that happened more recently. That was within the last 8 years or so. So it's still possible.
Yeah.
It's still possible to really, be knocked for a loop with these things. But it does happen less and less, because I even said it in the book, I've been fired so many times, and I've also been hired to replace the guy who's been fired, almost in equal measures.
Yeah. It's so like a kind of perfect circle of life kind of thing going on.
Yeah. It's the nature of the business. Most of it's very hard to take personally. There was one artist that I've been fired from twice, and I'm hoping to get fired from again. It's sort of like a life goal for me to see if I can get fired a third time. But after I was fired the first time and had that experience, I got hired with a new band was put together to back up this artist. And when I came into the new band, I said, yeah, I'd love to do it. But I said, just understand something. You need to all know this. We're all going to be fired. Eventually.
Yeah.
And they were like, no, come on, man. You don't know what you're talking about. We got a new band. We really know what we're doing. We're on our game. I said,
yeah, you guys don't know. Our cards are marked.
Mark my words. And of that, I think it was a 10-piece band. You know, there's one member remaining to this day. They one by one, we all went bing, 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 bing. Like, I told you, that's what's going to happen.
Wow. So one of my favorite romantic comedies is The Wedding Singer.
Oh yeah, sure.
I love that film so much. There's a part in there where Drew Barrymore's character she goes with a present of sheet music to him, and he's kind of on his way out the door, and basically kind of, you know, the sheet music goes flying around all over the place, and it's because he's seen her with her fiance the night before, and it was all that kind of, you know, he got the wrong message, kind of seeing her so happy getting married through the window, when what she was actually doing was kind of miming in her wedding dress what her name would be if she married him. And I love that film so much, particularly even though it's quite cheesy, the Billy Idol bit.
Sure.
When he comes to, have you met him?
I have not, but I know people that have worked with him. Yeah.
How am I striking out here? I've got anyway. But he. So yeah, one of my favorite lines from the film is like, I mean, obviously when he does the kind of Madonna piss take where he says, you know, I'm just a material boy, you know, living in a material world, and you know, you like material shit, don't you? That's why you're marrying him, and then he also says, there's a lot of money out there. I'm just trying to get my hands on some.
Sure.
You know, which is kind of fair. Anyway, I don't know why I brought that up. I know why I brought that up. Because you're sometimes a wedding singer. But it's a really weird combination, because you say weddings, funerals, and bar mitzvahs. Because like weddings and bar mitzvahs I get, but like, what do you sing at weddings? Funerals.
Funerals? Well, I mean, that's a catchphrase that I use all the time. Again, it's only halfway as a joke, because people say, you know, what are you working on now? I go, weddings, funerals, and bar mitzvahs. And they go, funerals? It always invites that response. But that said, we've played memorial services. We absolutely have. You know, and my second home after I left Chattanooga was New Orleans, Louisiana. Mm-hmm. And if you think about the brass band tradition, that's all funeral music. Yeah. You know, so they play funerals every day there. Like the second line, that's a funeral marching line. You know, that whole joyous celebration of life. So that's a real thing. You know, not as prevalent in New York City, but yeah, that's why I say weddings, funerals, bar mitzvahs.
Have you ever done a funk set at a funeral?
Me personally, no. But again, that New Orleans second line thing, that's a funk beat. So, you know, that's a whole sort of marching funk tradition down there. So that's a thing. It is a thing.
So as well as promoting the book, and you have the podcast as well, right?
I do.
What else is happening at the moment? And what have you got coming down the pipe?
Well, again, weddings, funerals, and bar mitzvahs, you know, playing a wedding tomorrow, as a matter of fact. I'm subbing on Broadway at Ain't Too Proud, The Life and Times of the Temptations. I'm learning the book over at Jersey Boys, the musical, which is all about the Four Seasons.
Right. So I was, so we saw Jersey Boys over here. Oh, God.
Yeah.
It was about probably 8 or 9 years ago.
It's a 15-year-old show.
What an incredible show. And what an incredible show for you to be part of. That's amazing.
It ran on Broadway for, I want to say 10 years, and now it's continuing to run off Broadway. And it's a friend of mine has just taken over the bass chair, and she needs subs. And I've been a trusted sub for her for a long time now, you know. 15 years into the run, I'm finally learning the bass part, including the choreography, including the haberdashery that we need to wear, you know, the black suit we're wearing on stage. So I got that coming up. I got a whole bunch of music that I recorded during the pandemic, which has been sort of being released kind of piecemeal on a company called Color Red Music it's run by the Eddie from the New Master Sounds. That's been very exciting, sort of releasing original music. There's a big rock tour that may or may not happen next year, sort of depending on how things are going. Like, everybody's watching the tours that are out now to see, are they operating? Are they canceling shows? Are they having breakthrough cases with the touring company? There's a whole bunch of things like that. So there's one in the wings that I can't quite talk about yet, but we're just sort of waiting for a phone call. Like, it could happen any day now, and who knows. But I find that if I have, as a freelancer, this is an interesting point too. As a freelancer, if I have something like that on the horizon to sort of look forward to, it'll sustain me through all the rest of the regular sort of workaday stuff.
Yeah.
It kind of gives me something to proverbially hang my hat on. And also I'm doing, some of the concerts are back with some of the classic rock and roll and classic soul artists that I work with. So I've been doing some concerts occasionally with Jay and the Americans, recently with Little Anthony and the Imperials, and some things like that. So it's a very disparate group of bookings that I have. But I am booked already. I have at least weddings that I know about through the end of next year. So I feel like I have, not job security, but I feel like, I'll probably be able to get away with paying the mortgage for yet another calendar year. So
Yeah.
That's a big accomplishment as a freelancer, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh yeah, tell me about it. You every day you get to live again is a blessing, right?
If you keep the lights on for another month, you're like, yep, that's a success.
Exactly. But then you do say towards the end of the book that, and obviously the reader gets this sentiment altogether, that through your storytelling, you definitely understand that you, sir, are not in it for the money, because you haven't you haven't got that big rich kind of rock and roll lifestyle where people are just throwing money at you all the time and so on. To this day, you are working so hard, and you don't rely on catching just one kind of gig. You've always got things on the go to make sure that you're in work and you're providing for your family and so on as well. And that's testament to you. But and obviously we all need to pay the bills, but your raison d'etre is beyond that. It's not about masses of financial gain. It's about being happy in life and doing what you love doing, and obviously bringing joy to other people as well.
Yeah, I think sort of, looking at the back end of a 30-year career, clearly I must like it, because I wouldn't have stuck with it for so long. Because again, with the hard work and the challenges and the disappointments, if you didn't love some aspect of it, you'd get out. You'd go get a real job. You go work in finance or, law or medicine or something, make some real money. Go work on Wall Street, kind of make some real money. So clearly that's not been my primary focus at all. Not to say that there aren't people that I know that have made a lot of money in the music business. It's possible, but it's unlikely. You know what I mean? So you have to sort of be realistic about this. Like, chances are you're not going to hit the lottery. You could. It's possible. But, if you got to really enjoy playing. And I think that I have, and I think that I do. Again, playing from 1 to 4 in the morning last night, as I do, and it's a very low money gig. It's not a high paying job at all. But for me, that's like musically going to the gym. It's a funk workout. It's like rhythm calisthenics, and the guys in the band are good enough that you can go in and really sort of enjoy playing. We play for like 2 solid hours, just nonstop, full volume funk music, and that I would do any day of the week. I love it. It's been great fun.
It's one of the end quotes that really, really stuck with me, and I've actually got it printed on my wall opposite, on my desk, along with a couple of others. But it's gone in my collection now, and if I may read it back to you, you know what it is.
I'd love to hear it.
All I do is for naught. Even if one person finds enjoyment or solace from listening to me play, that's a good day. If I can accomplish that for my annual average of 228 gigs a calendar year, I will officially have had more good days than bad. And that's worth something, isn't it?
Yeah. 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 That's how I feel. And that moment came to me after, I was playing in the house band at a jam session that I did every Monday night for a long time. And it was like 3:00 in the morning, and there's two drunks at the bar. And I'm like wondering aloud to a friend of mine, what are we doing? Is this worth it? It's like, is this even a thing? Should we even be here now? And this lady who I just met at the time, she said, "No, you got to understand that you're creating a collective experience for these people. Even if it's a small number of people, you're affecting people, and you're binding people together in a unifying experience, and it's important on a community level. It's on a local level, on an extremely local level. That's a very important thing to do.
Yeah.
If you can do it on a mass scale, that's great too. But you can't discount. And you can think of examples in your own life growing up, where you had somebody who was a catalyst for good in your life. It's a very one-to-one kind of thing. So having that perspective dropped upon me was very important. It stayed with me, and it inspired me to write that passage that you just read so kindly.
Yeah. Jason Yap, who he's a music dance director, and dancer, based out in Slovakia. Funnily enough, he's originally from Malaysia. Absolutely wonderful human being, and I had the good fortune to spend some time with him, and we both got into podcasting around the same kind of time, and he was saying that early on he was really worried and kind of focused on listening numbers and that sort of thing, and kind of almost got obsessed with it to the point where then kind of felt like, am I really enjoying this anymore? And we all kind of we all feel like that, whatever we do. But his philosophy nowadays is that even if when he puts an episode out, if one person listens to it and that one person gets something from it, or that one person gets the help that they need from that, then that one person was enough. So thank you so much for sharing that, and we haven't even scratched the surface of your life. I feel like like I said, we've gone for about 90 minutes. We could go for days. So hopefully we'll get to do this again. Ivan, where can people find you online, and how can they get hold of the book?
Yes, funkboy.net, funkboy.net. Spelling counts. It's not Funky Boy. Some people think it's Funky Boy. It's not. It's Funkboy.
Yeah, exactly. And
that has links to Amazon. The book's available on Amazon. It's available directly through me for domestic, I should say, U.S. shipping. International shipping is quite dear, so you might want to find it on Amazon UK if you're in the UK. It's got links to all my social medias. All that stuff is there at funkboy.net. I can be found. I am findable.
Exactly. And also, if anyone's been thinking of taking up the bass and has been looking for a teacher that is as nice as Ivan is, Ivan also does teach online as well, so you don't have to be in New York. He'll teach you wherever you are in the world, and as we know,
that's true.
His body clock doesn't function like a normal human being, so time zones don't seem to matter.
That's right. Yeah, I have students that I teach virtually as well as in person too, so yeah, happy to do that. I'm really good I find I'm more successful as an educator if you have questions. If you have specific questions, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. And then I can sort of explain to you how I've solved these sort of same musical kind of problems. Like, yeah. I enjoy doing that.
I think if I ever decide to pick up bass, then I would definitely have you teach me, because I am the kind of student that asks a lot of questions.
Yeah, good.
You probably got that already, though. My Yamaha Auditorium acoustic is sitting downstairs, and we had a visitor to our home who, I don't know what she was doing with it, but she broke two of the strings and didn't tell me.
Oh dear.
So anyway, I've got some new sets of strings, and that's my Christmas basically, is to reconnect with that instrument.
Yeah, good.
But yeah, like you, I originally kind of picked it up because well, actually, it was my wedding. I kind of had this crazy idea that I said to my best friend, I'm going to play two, if not three, of mine and Carolina's favorite Foo Fighter songs for her at the wedding. And
nice,
you're going to
nice.
sing them. And he looked at me and he said, that's really nice and that's really romantic and that's such a grand gesture. There's only one problem.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? And he said, you don't play guitar, dude. I was like, that's true. I did play keyboard at college, but yeah, minor issue. And so we're only about 4 or 5 weeks from the wedding, and I buy this guitar, and basically it lived on my back everywhere I went. Yeah. So I imagine you're working, you've got a tailor visiting you who's all dressed up in a suit and so on. He's got a guitar strapped to his back. Because I would just practice every second I got, and yeah, I made it through. It all went well.
I'm glad there's a happy ending to that story.
But I kind of discovered the top E string, because I was just kind of playing around with it, because it's kind of it's, obviously it's the bass string on a 6 string, right? And all of a sudden, I was just suddenly playing the bass part to White Stripes,
Seven Nation Army.
Yeah, which is very, I mean, you're probably laughing because it's dead easy for you, but I was like, oh my god, I'm a rock god. This is so cool. I'm going to start learning bass guitar.
Yeah, well, that's how it happens. I learned on a bass. A fellow that lived in the dormitories at my high school it only had 2 strings on it. 2 of the strings were broken; they were gone. But I only need 2 strings to pick out a couple of melodies. I could have done Seven Nation Army on that bass, but it hadn't been written yet. But that was the kind of thing. Like by ear, you sort of start to pull out these lines and. Yeah, that's how it starts, man. You got to be careful.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, I have the bug. It's just, COVID and work have just really got in the way of everything. Just trying to survive the last 18 months. But I need to bring I need to bring music back into my life. So I need to get next week out of the way. Then I got 2 weeks off, and me and that Yamaha are reconnecting big time.
Good.
Ivan, thank you so much, really. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you for, again, just allowing me to sort of delve a little bit more into some of those fascinating stories. And again, there are literally hundreds and hundreds that we have not even touched on. So I hope we might be able to kind of get into some of that at some point in the future. And thank you.
I'd love to.
And thank you so much for all the life lessons that you've shared and inspired as well. I feel like, having read your memoirs, that I just feel like I'm a better person for it because of what you've shared. So thank you so much for that. And I'll make sure that I have all of your links in the show notes for you guys and girls at home. Have you had fun?
I've had a blast. It's been great meeting you, and really that's the nicest thing that anybody's ever said about this book. So it means so much to me that you've actually read it and actually enjoyed it and got something from it, because that was the idea. I'm trying to share life experiences with people. I'm not trying to tell people how to live, but I'm trying to sort of show by example that there's a lot of strange things that and good things that can come from adversity. If you sort of like move that into something that you make work for yourself and as a positive experience. So the fact that you came away from that with that idea is very meaningful to me. So I really appreciate that. It means a lot to me.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you so much for joining me, Ivan. And thank you for joining us on this episode. What an incredible story. And as I've said, we didn't even scratch the surface of Ivan's incredible journey and life experiences. So if you want to find out more, please go grab his book. I will put the link in the show notes for you. That's it for this episode. Thank you once again for joining us. As I said at the top of the show, please remember to subscribe and review. You can also click the share button in your player to send the show on to people you know too. If you do buy Ivan's book, please make sure that you review and share that as well. You'll get so much from it. And if you do, make sure that you review it and you share it with your friends and family, because you'll be helping them too. We're entering the busy Christmas period at Revilla London, so we're probably due at least one more episode before the holidays to round off season 3. Make sure you don't miss a thing by hitting that subscribe button, and I'll see you on the next one.